Sir, I'm Nishant PM. I'm from Hyderabad of Telangana state. My parents are retired private professionals. I have done my schooling from St. Mary's High School in Hyderabad, and I have done my intermediate from Narayana Junior College. Later, I have done my graduation in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from CVR College of Engineering in Hyderabad. And then I have joined BHEL as an engineer trainee, and subsequently I have done my postgraduate diploma in energy and management. My hobbies include playing cricket and playing Carnatic violin. I am married and I have a 3-year-old girl child, sir.
You are basically an engineer, no?
Yes, sir.
Then why do you want to join public service?
Sir, joining civil service has been my childhood passion, sir, which has been inspired by my grandfather. So after my graduation, I had to do the job, so I joined BHEL. And then once I could stabilize financially, I was pursuing civil services.
What was your grandfather? What was it?
Sir, he retired as a joint registrar for High Court, sir.
Okay. You worked in BHEL, no?
Yes.
Still you are working?
Yes, sir.
Still you are working here. Government of India has recently come up with this privatization of public sector units. What is your opinion or views about that?
Sir, regarding privatization, my view is the public sector enterprises which are doing reasonably well, which are profit making, should be allowed to continue, and because basically they are giving huge amount of revenue to the government quarter on quarter. But the public sector enterprises which are a burden, which are making continuous losses and are in red, they can definitely be explored for privatizations.
So you mean to say those who are making profits should be out of this privatization?
They can be allowed to compete with the private players.
But government of India is not doing that.
Yes, sir.
Then
I think we should allow the government companies to compete, sir. The government might be.
What is the advantage? Suppose government company is there. What is the advantage for the public, for the common man? If it's a private company or a public company, what is the advantage they have?
Sir, for a common man, a government company, if you see even in the recent COVID pandemic times, so we could see that there was a tremendous vaccine shortage, and also some private hospitals happened to take a lot of benefit out of the situation. Whereas if we had proper public infrastructure, many lives could have been saved. Similarly, public enterprises have been the growth engines for India for last 7 decades. So the common man will definitely benefit with regard to their services.
Then why are they privatizing Visakhapatnam steel plant?
So government believes that it should exit as many businesses as possible, because it feels that now there are enough risk-taking entrepreneurs who can take up these public sector units and run them. So that is government's view, sir.
No, government can't take risk.
Sir, ideally, if you ask me, I think government should allow these companies to take risk and compete with the private players.
No, Modi.
What for they are doing?
So they want through
There is some
disinvestment.
reason behind, no?
Yes, sir. Through disinvestment, they want to get the revenue, sir.
Is the only idea some other
And
benefits are
one
also
reason
there?
is to make these the claim from the government is to make them more efficient, as well as to get the income from these disinvestments.
So main primary objective is to make them more efficient. That's right?
Yes, sir.
Now, Prime Minister Modi said the opponents of Vizag steel plant privatization, he said, we don't mind to remove all 60,000 employees if you oppose this idea of privatization. So, what is your opinion on that?
Sir, I think if the privatization of Vizag steel plant has to happen, it should happen with the consensus of the stakeholders. the employees at the end of the day have been instrumental in making the company run for so many decades. So if the company has to be privatized, government, central government has to take the employees into confidence and only take the decisions.
Suppose, can you imagine a situation where Government of India imposes a condition that even after privatization also, that private fellow, whoever takes that, you should continue all these people as employees of that institution. Can Government of India impose such a condition?
It may, once the government loses the stake, maybe it cannot impose such conditions, sir. It may only make a appeal to the private player, whoever is taking up the company, to not remove the employees and continue the company as it is.
Then why government is taking such a risk in becoming unpopular with all these 60,000 and their dependents and all that in making this steel plant privatization to private sector?
So the government has been maintaining that it doesn't want to have a presence in many sectors, like it has identified certain strategic sectors and want to be only in certain strategic sectors and limited number of PSUs or the public sector enterprises. So Vizag Steel Plant doesn't come into the category of the so-called strategic PSU. So government is firm on its decisions.
Okay. Now that you are aspiring to become civil service officer and you are hardworking and studying and all that, writing exams, etc., etc. You are now at the entry point, but already the people who are in service, they have already rendered some considerable service and they are quitting the service to become a politicians. How do you analyze this situation?
Sir, I always believe that politics is also a form of public service. So if some civil servant, after maybe even during their tenure or after their tenure, if they are feeling that through politics they are able to serve the public better, they can always take up that area and explore public service.
Such people are not inspiring you.
Sir, as of now, I am not so inclined towards politics, sir.
It is not politics. Such people who have quit the service and entering politics, such people are not inspiring you.
I have not thought on those lines.
Can you name one person in the country? Can you name one person in the country who has quit service and joined politics and become some important person?
Yes, sir. The recent appointment, that is the Minister of Railways, Shri Ashwini, is a former civil servant, sir. He was.
I think did he resign or did he retire?
He resigned, sir. He
He
resigned
resigned.
in 2015 and then got elected as Rajya Sabha MP, and later he was appointed as.
What
Union
about
Cabinet.
Mr. Kejriwal?
Yes, sir. Kejriwal also has taken VRS, sir. He has resigned.
He has fought direct elections.
Yes, sir.
He has not come through Rajya Sabha route.
Yes, sir.
He was elected by the people.
Yes, sir.
Anybody from AP or Telangana?
Sir, we have Jayaprakash Narayan, sir, who has, after his civil servant, he has contested as an MLA for Kukatpalli constituency. And he was a term MLA in United Andhra Pradesh Assembly also, sir.
What do you consider political service is a better service for people or bureaucratic service is better?
Sir, in the framework of Indian Constitution, both the services have equal role to play, sir. Like the politicians who become the main forebearers of the executive, and the bureaucrats are the back end of the executive. So the symbiosis between politicians and bureaucracy is at the end of the day very important for the development of the nation, sir.
No, it is important, but is that happening?
There might be some lacunae at some point, sir, but if it's I cannot say that it is not completely happening also, because if the synergy is completely missing, there would not be the progress which we are seeing, sir. At least there is some amount of progress which we are seeing, because there is some kind of consensus and synergy between the politicians and bureaucrats.
Can we say that such lacuna are responsible for the underdevelopment of the nation?
At some instances, yes, sir.
Can you give one or two examples?
Sir, the examples can be some good schemes. So, I would say I would take a positive example, sir. Like the good scheme, like if we see the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. So it was implemented by the UPA government, and then initially, though there was resistance from the present government, it has again rediscovered the importance of that scheme towards the employment generation and how it has actually impacted in the poverty mitigation. So though the governments have changed, the scheme continued again and has been in fact taken to the next level. I believe it is because of the back end system, that is the bureaucrat machinery, which was actually convinced by the scheme, and maybe they could convince the new government also to continue that.
Have you ever thought about the meaning of your name?
Yes, sir.
What is the meaning of your name?
Sir, Nishant means Nisha is the darkness, sir. So something which ends the darkness is Nishant. So basically it is the first ray of the sun, the early morning, the dawn which we call, sir.
Early morning rays
Yes.
of the sun.
Grandfather is from judiciary.
Yes, sir. He retired as a joint registrar of High Court.
Did he not inspire you to be part of judicial system?
Sir, with my interaction with my grandfather, he used to tell me, because his brother-in-law was a IAS officer. So it seems, I am not actually aware of that, but it seems he also wanted to become a civil servant. But in those days, there was some income criteria to become a civil servant. So he actually repented that he could not be a civil servant. So he used to inspire me in my childhood with the stories of his brother-in-law. So he, being a judicial officer, he never used to reveal about his professional careers. So I was more impacted towards the civil services from his stories only.
Are there any ideals for you to achieve after becoming some civil servant?
The ideal, I believe, is the most important thing for a civil service officer is having utmost compassion, sir. And if I have the compassion, I think whatever the system is expecting from me, I can deliver that. Irrespective of the situation I am placed in, if I am compassionate towards the common man and the poorest of the person, I can definitely deliver and become the facilitator in the systems.
Being an engineer, what would you cite of lack of skills in present youth who are very poor and getting employed?
Sir, the basic issue, I will take the engineer graduates only as an example, sir. If you see the engineer curriculum, the curriculum is very extensively built up, sir. The curriculum is very good. But the problem is many colleges have mushroomed, and most of the colleges do not have the appropriate infrastructure to being called an engineering college. And there are not enough labs which actually give us the practical exposure. So more often than not, the youth who are coming up from such engineering colleges are found wanting for the skill set when they are hired by the private companies or the government companies. So I think going forward, sir, we have to have the mandatory exposure towards the practical knowledge instead of theories. We should focus more on the practical knowledge, and thereby the skill sets will develop, sir.
What do you infer with the recent judgment, recent appointment of Commissioner of Delhi?
Sir,
With respect to the previous Supreme Court judgment?
yes, sir, the Supreme Court judgment of 2006 was pretty much clear. It was that someone should have minimum 6 months of tenure, and I think it was more of a political appointment, sir.
So what would you do if you were in that place?
Which place, sir?
being appointed as a commissioner without proper tenure?
I would not take up that role, sir. Since I have only 3 months of service left, I would better not take up that role instead of getting into controversy. And I think
You are
it is
worried
against
about
my
con-
ethics, sir.
Why are you worried about controversy? Government is offering, you are getting appointed. Why are you worried?
It is against my ethics, sir. I would not take up something which is clearly spelled out in a judgment.
Apart from this 6 months issue there, in this appointment of police commissioner of Delhi, there is another issue. What is that? 6 months is one issue, I agree.
Something.
Yes, sir. This particular individual was former CBI director also, sir. Then he was later transferred. There was some issue with his fellow colleague, and then he was later transferred to one of the border security forces as
I can
in
say
charge.
that is a factual
Yes, sir.
situation. Some constitutional issue is there.
I have not come across it, sir. Not.
Did Delhi government recommend his name? Or did Delhi government was consulted? Was consulted by the DOPT before appointment.
I have not read that, sir.
So this is an issue. They raised it.
Thank you, sir.
The government was not consulted by
Okay.
Lieutenant Governor or whoever, DOPT, central government appointing him.
Okay.
Probably is without consulting the Delhi government. They raised this issue. Because an elected government, no? We need to be consulted. That's what they say. That's one more issue.
Okay, sir.
Secondly, what is the judicial activism?
Judicial activism, sir. Sir, judicial activism is actually referred to a case where the judiciary on either through public interest litigation or through suo motu, it takes up certain important public issues, and then it tries to weigh these issues against the constitutional fundamental rights and then pronounce judgments.
So what do we know judicial activism? Yes, they pronounce it.
Yes, sir.
But why do you say it is judicial activism?
Because it has by itself or through PIL, it has taken up the issues.
What is separation of powers?
Yes, sir. So, separation of powers is basic one of the fundamental pillars of the Indian Constitution, sir, where the judiciary, executive and legislature are supposed to operate in their own domain without overreach, without coming into the powers of other wing of the democracy, sir.
Okay. So in this connection, what is judicial activism?
Sir, judicial activism for me is fine, sir. The problem is when we refer to a situation called judicial overreach. So there is a very thin and fine line between judicial activism and judicial overreach. For me, the judicial activism, as long as it is benefiting the common man, I am okay with it, sir. But judicial overreach is something where the boundaries are passed and the separation of powers is being impacted, sir. For example, sir, if I may say, the judiciary was very active during the pandemic. It was guiding and one of the judges, Honorable Supreme Court judges, even said that the role of judiciary is not to meddle with the governance and governance affairs, but only to facilitate wherever we think it is required for us to get involved. For example, with regard to the oxygen supply, sir, it formed a committee to get the oxygen supply ensured to all the states. So there I think the judiciary played a very good role, sir. So as long as it is benefiting the common man and upholding the fundamental rights of an individual, judicial activism should be fine, sir.
Then what is judicial overreach, as you are saying? What is overreach? Give me an example.
Yes, sir. So judicial overreach is something where the judiciary gets into the policy making, where the judiciary is not sufficiently empowered or qualified. I may take an example here also, sir. For example, few years back in Delhi, judiciary, the Supreme Court has banned the diesel vehicles from entering into Delhi. At that point, though the judgment was pronounced, no one was ready to honor that judgment because there was a lot of resentment towards the judgment. It was an impromptu judgment. So I think there the judiciary was not qualified to know the exact details, like how much pollution a diesel vehicle is causing, what are the statistics, how old vehicles should be banned. such governance and such nitty-gritty should be left to the government. If at all, if judiciary has to involve, judiciary may say that this is an issue, government take the decision.
Where government will not take a decision, then what to do?
Like any council board.
Like there are so many issues where the government has not taken any decision because they have their own problems
Yes, sir.
in taking decisions.
What about appointment of judges itself?
Yes, sir. Sir, governments are at the end of the
No,
day.
I am putting a question.
Yes, sir.
Supreme Court said they will appoint their own judges.
Hmm.
What is it judicial activism or judicial overreach?
Sir, there is a systematic procedure mentioned, sir. Like judiciary cannot appoint its own judges. There is a system where the president has to sign and for each appointment. So obviously the executive is involved. So that is where we call the system of checks and balances and separation of powers. So when the
But
legislation
who will have
passed,
final say? Is it Supreme Court or the law minister or prime minister or cabinet? Who will have final say in the appointment of Supreme Court or High Court judges?
sir, the final say as of now, if the recommendations are made again, so the Supreme Court is having the final say. If the judge's name is initially rejected or suspended,
Is it not amounting to judicial overreach or judicial activism as the case may be?
yes, sir. I think there we need to implement the National Judiciary Commission bill, which was
But that was struck down by
Yes,
the
sir.
act has been struck down
yes, sir. I think
By
it
Supreme
should
Court
not
itself.
have been struck down.
by Supreme Court itself.
My opinion is that it should not have been struck down, sir. Maybe if there was an issue with the procedure could have been rectified, but it should not have been struck down.
There are instances, for example, when Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister, she has bypassed the recommendations of the Supreme Court in appointing Chief Justice of Supreme Court himself.
Yes, sir.
It was called as supersession of judges.
Yes, sir.
Supervision of judges. Anyway, for superseding the judgments of judges, it requires a lot of courage.
Yes, sir.
Whatever you feel that it is beneficial to the public, in the public interest, you can do anything. But doing such things, sometimes ignoring or bypassing, or you may call activities, or you may say overreaching, all this requires a lot of courage.
The COVID-19 has really impacted and shattered the lives of people as well as the economy. What are the steps that are to be taken to revive the economy?
Sir, the second wave has been severely impacting the economy, especially because people have really been afraid of the COVID, and they started spending less and less. So basically now the demand of the economy is really poor. So the immediate goal in front of the government is to revive the demand and facilitate public to spend more so that the economy will boost. Parallelly, government also should be more liberal, which I think the present government is doing well there, that government should spend more so that the demand is created and the economy can be revived, sir. And also COVID-19 is a opportunity to set right few things which were not really good in the previous economic growth models.
The first phase of COVID has impacted more on Indian economy, or second you said?
First phase was a kind of supply and demand shock, sir, where we were affected by the supply as well as demand. So when we were just in a phase of recovery, the second wave has again suppressed the recovery, sir.
The migration of labor
Yes, sir.
has taken more in the case of first,
Yes, sir.
whereas in the second phase, of course, there is not that much. The reason is what? The reason?
Reason, sir. Sir, I think the reason being during the first wave, the supply and demand were impacted, and the panic among the common people was also very high, because the entire disease was very new to the mankind, and there was no sufficient literature or research as to what exactly is causing COVID. So whenever there was sudden shutdown, the industries were shut down, and the informal labor and the migrant labor were very badly affected, and they had to migrate. By the time it came to the second wave, sir, people were more aware about what exactly the COVID is, but unfortunately we could not control the outbreak and the number of deaths. But even today, if we see, sir, there is definitely more knowledge in a common man about the COVID when compared to the first wave.
No, in the first wave, of course, it was the central government, Indian government, which has taken up the responsibility of closing down the things and dictating terms to
Yes.
each and every state.
Yes.
Whereas in the second phase, what?
It was left to the individual state governments to
government.
handle, sir. Yes.
That is why
That is why maybe the migrants are not so much in picture during the second wave.
some economic activity was
Yes,
on.
sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Talking about the economy, being as an engineer, recently there is this shift over from mechanical like diesel petrol vehicles to electrical vehicles. How do you look when related to economy? If it is far more inclined towards the electrical vehicles, or if we encourage more cycling, because there are more electrical vehicles or two-wheelers. Now we are making awareness towards that. As an engineer, it is also an advancement, reducing the consumption of fuels.
Yes, sir.
So, increasing this kind of awareness reduces the economic activity, because there will not be any this import of fuels, and there is nothing automobile economic activity also comes down. So what do you look at the improvement of the health of the individuals or reduction of the economic activity? What do you look at?
Sir, I would term it as a prosperity of individuals, sir. For me, individuals' prosperity is more important when compared to the economic growth. Here, prosperity, I mean to say that the health and well-being of an individual, because I think the time is up, sir, for us to give up on the fossil fuels, and the faster we move away from the conventional fuels, it is better for us. We have all seen, and we are practically seeing day in and day out the kind of havoc the fossil fuels are creating to the Mother Earth. So electrical vehicles are a wonderful idea, sir, and we have to aggressively pursue it. And I think in next decade or so, we should, if it is really possible, we have to phase out all the internal combustion engines, sir. And that will result, that may temporarily set back the economy, sir, but for me the prosperity and well-being of an individual is more important than the economy, sir.
How is your look at the Bhutan's economy?
Bhutan's economy, sir. Sir, again, with regard to Bhutan, I would not like to see as an economic model. If we see the Human Development Index and the Happiness Index, they are very well placed, sir. I would be really happy to see India surpassing Bhutan in Happiness Index when compared to economy, sir.
But what is population of Bhutan? What is population of India? Can you compare Bhutan to India or India to Kapur?
We can definitely make a try, sir.
Then we have to lose a lot of engineers like you.
Engineers can help us driving in that Happiness Index.
Bhutan doesn't allow in advancement of all these technological advancements.
Your optional.
What are your hobbies, Mr. Prasad?
I play Carnatic violin and I play cricket, sir.
Can you name some important Carnatic violinists who are
Yes, sir.
famous?
Violinists.
Yes, sir. One, I'll mention the Trinity, sir. That is the Lalgudi
Jayaraman.
Lalgudi Jayaraman, M.G. Gopalakrishnan and T.N. Krishnan, sir. And then I was inspired by the recent one, Mr. Ambi Subramanian, and then I have heard the violin compositions of Kunnakudi Vaidyanathan, sir.
Are you a good singer?
No, sir, I am not a singer.
Good. Okay.
Anyway, your option is anthropology.
Yes, sir.
Now, can you tell me about what you mean by cultural anthropology, how it differs from physical and social anthropologies?
Sir, cultural anthropology is basically study of different cultures, and the cultural relativism, which we call, is the main component of the cultural anthropology. How different simple societies have different kinds of cultures. Physical anthropology, sir, it's basically, I believe it's an extension of biology, where we are studying different the evolution of man from the scientific from the body perspective, like from how the cell is growing and how the cell is replicating into a DNA, then RNA, and then a protein. So this is basic how the body, the biological evolution of man is the basic thing of a physical anthropology. And the social anthropology also is nothing but the extension of cultural anthropology only, sir.
Have you heard the name of a famous anthropologist like Hammondorf?
Hammondorf, yes, sir.
Do you know something about him? What did he do?
Yes, sir.
Tell me.
Sir, he initially worked in the Northeast, sir. Initially worked in Northeast and made lot of contributions towards Nagas, studying Naga culture and all. And later he moved on to the Deccan area, sir. He served as an advisor to the erstwhile Nizam of Telangana, and he has helped us in understanding the culture of the native tribes of Telangana, like Konda Reddys and the Gonds. So he was, to my knowledge, in my limited knowledge, sir, he acted as an advisor to Nizam also towards the tribal policies.
He worked on the Gonds of Adilabad district.
Yes, sir.
He stayed there, and in the final years he died there also. In Adilabad.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Can you tell me the world famous scientist and Nobel laureate? Apart from his scientific profession, he was also violinist. Can you name?
Unable to recollect.
He is no other than Einstein. Einstein is also famous violinist.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that.
And cycling was also his hobby,
Okay, sir.
apart from his theory of relativity and other things. Only for your information.
Good, I think.
Okay.
Good luck, Nishan. I think anything you want from us.
If you want to ask anything,
Sir, just
Yeah, Kokapet recently, it is in news,
yes, sir. For the land auction.
land auction. So I would rather ask you one question. So whenever government wants money, extra money, of course they go on selling like this, What about, see, the things are not going to stop in a year or two. This will be a continuous process. How about the people who are going to be there in the future? What would be their fate? Is it wise on the part of the government to do this kind of a thing?
Sir, the area has developed significantly now, and
I'm asking a basic question.
yes, sir.
Is it justifiable on the part of government to do such kind of activity?
I think it is justified, sir, in selling its own land, and it has made good money which can be used for development in other sectors.
Yeah, wait for 10 more years. The land which is now costing 25 crores of rupees per acre might cost you 75 or 100 crores, no? The person who is going to manage the show by then will get more benefits than present things, is it?
Yes, sir.
So if people are going to do this kind of activity, will it not harm the economy?
But today the government is in dire need of funds, sir, because of the COVID and other.
I am asking you, is it good on the part of the government to do that kind of? Say yes or no.
I think it is justified, sir.
But you need to always say balance. Government need to assess its requirement.
Yes, sir.
What is future also? Future account they will assess.
Future is
So
also
for future they can reserve. Whatever is surplus after that they can sell it. So
Yes.
it can be a balanced answer.
Okay.
Instead of saying no, they can do it, instead they can't do it. So you can always balance it. That approach probably will be better.
Here you said economy is important, there you asked human satisfaction is more important.
Yes.
So you need to maintain some balance regarding your answers, your perspective.
Okay.
And you must always be logical in your approach. And don't change your stand to one question to other question.
Okay.
That always is, that's also gauged by them.
Like and subscribe Eagle Media Works.